Welcome back to Creating Dementia Solutions. I'm Richard Pyatt. This is a Miles for Memories program. Miles for Memories in Calhoun County is busy, focused on the caregiver on this series in 2024 and things that a caregiver is concerned about, particularly as it relates to caring for those with dementia. MilesForMemories.org is the website and also the Facebook page. So go to the search bar on Facebook, type Miles for Memories, and like that page, and you'll be alerted when these episodes come available as podcasts. And certainly you're seeing us on Access Vision and maybe even on YouTube as well. So thank you. I want to welcome to the program Christy Lisinski, Marketing Director with Lakeview Assisted Living.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Christy.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Today, we're going to talk about a subject that I suppose if caregivers have seen or heard no other episodes, engage with this one because It is about caregiver burnout. Oh my gosh, those two words are so powerful because at some point it's probably going to happen.
Yes, absolutely inevitable. Especially because we are seeing individuals with dementia. I mean, it seems to be happening. You can see it earlier and earlier. And these caregivers, family members, a lot of the times, they're working. And if anybody is like me, which I'm sure a lot of people are, I'm always, I can handle it. I can handle it.
Oh,
I can
boy.
handle it. You know,
Sure.
you just, it piles on and eventually you just hit a wall.
So there were about 16 things you just said that were impressive to me. One is we're caregivers, but we're also maintaining our routines, whether that's work, caring for our other family members, etc. And we also have this notion that, just let me handle it. I'll take care of it. All of this eventually runs your tank empty, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's very interesting because there was a study done where if you were to hand somebody like a piece of paper, anything, you just hand, and they're like hardwired to just grab it.
The reflex.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
But there's always that one person in every family unit or social unit who always gets all of the things. And a lot of times it gets piled on to one person, even if it's, situations when you have a loved one with dementia, you need a team. And sometimes you can find that in a family unit. Sometimes it's family and friends, but a lot of times you see it's just one person and they're taking on this burden all on their own.
And that's the person who's the doer,
Yes.
probably, right?
Yes.
They get things done, so we're going to get Sally to do it because she gets things done. Or maybe that whole approach is just the way it goes. It's a reflex.
Yeah, it's a reflex for the people handing that work off to, because Sally always takes care of it.
Does it.
Sally knows what to do. So
what happens when Sally burns out?
Exactly.
Then what do we do? And you talked about a team. Sometimes that involves bringing in others to assist. We've talked about that in other episodes, but at some point someone says maybe assisted living is the next step.
Right, and usually people come to that decision. We want to keep our loved ones home as long as possible, but perhaps when it comes to someone with dementia, perhaps it's gotten to the point where they're not eating and they're needing more reminders, or maybe even wandering becomes an issue.
Sure.
And sometimes people just are more apt to be more amenable to doing things for somebody who's not their family.
Oh.
So we see a lot of that in assisted living as well. So
that's interesting you said that. I was just having a conversation yesterday with some friends of mine, and they have elderly parents. And one of the wishes of the elderly parent of the daughter-in-law was, don't let my son, her husband, take care of me if I can't.
Right.
With certain routines, toileting, whatever the situation was. So that's a point at which assisted living is probably already come into play.
Exactly. So, and there's a slew of things that I would really encourage people to think about as they're looking at options for their loved one. And
Such as?
really just tour, obviously tour. You need to feel at home when you walk into a place. Every place has their own vibe, and people connect with different things. And so I highly encourage people to tour and ask all of the questions. There are no stupid questions when it comes to situations like this. Well, any situation, but especially this one.
Right.
Ask all of the questions that you possibly can, and come with expectations. Come with knowing what your loved one's routine is and sharing that with the community, because they should be able to be very transparent with you and telling you, yes, we can do that, no, we can't do that, and either no, we can't do that, but we can try this, or just no, we can't do that, this might not be a good fit, but let me point you in another direction.
Sure.
So
when we talk about burnout, caregiver burnout, there's probably, and we've talked about some of them, the resources that are out there that can help take up some of the slack,
yes,
to allow some respite. But I think when you meet someone, there's been a threshold crossed, and there's a concern that now the caregiver at home is not able to manage all of that.
right, yeah, so this would be more of a permanent solution in lieu of a respite.
Yeah. Is that what you often see, is someone who's now said that an event has happened, someone's wandered, there's been some other issue, and they say, okay, now we're in a different place?
It depends. When somebody gets to that point, I would highly encourage them to focus more on a memory care, with more of a secure community. In my capacity, because Lakeview in particular, which is who I work for, we have people with dementia there. Sometimes if the loved one is amenable to making that change more early on, then they can come and establish new routines, and have that be at home, and they get used to that and accustomed to that setting. They make those connections earlier on in their dementia diagnosis, and sometimes they're able to stay until they pass there. So it just depends. As you know, the disease is so individualized and how it affects each and every person. So we make no guarantees, but we do the best that we can.
So let's suppose a decision is made now that a caregiver has decided that assisted living is the option for their person.
Yes.
And now that has taken place, and they have emotions about that, don't they?
Of course they do. Yeah, anytime that somebody is moving into an assisted living per se, I guess I always kind of liken it. They go through like a grieving process.
Sure.
They're grieving the loss of their home, which some people have lived in 50, 60, 70 years, of what they perceive to be their independence because of that stereotype and that mentality that they have about having to move into a home. It's a grieving process, and there has to be opportunities at that community, wherever they may go, to help pull them through that.
And then the caregiver has emotions about that too.
Oh, yes, guilt, and
Yes.
it depends on what the dynamic is like between the caregiver and the person they're caring for. Sometimes there's a lot of guilt. Sometimes there's relief, which then they also sometimes feel guilty for.
About. That's
So,
right.
so it's not just taking care of the resident who moves in. It is absolutely having to be there for family as well, or for caregivers, because there's a lot that they're dealing with as that whole process takes place.
Sure. And part of that might be that the role changed over time as they were a caregiver, right? Let's use an example of being a son or a daughter of
Yes.
someone who is living with dementia. So now their role has changed as a caregiver, and now assisted living is in the picture. Their parent has moved in. What's that role like for a caregiver now that there's a team involved?
Right. It certainly doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So sometimes people, what we see a lot of, somebody starts to become a caregiver for their loved one. So you start caring for mom, for example. all of a sudden you're not just son, but you are the financial power of attorney, you are the healthcare power of attorney, you are transportation, you're the cook, the cleaner, you become all of these roles. And of course you don't mind doing it. This is your mom, you love to do this for her. But when that transition takes place, when mom gets to move into like an assisted living community, you don't have to be the cleaner and the transportation and all of these things. However, your role is not diminished in being a caregiver once mom is in that community, because nobody knows mom better than you, right?
Right.
So, and the community wants all that information. The more information, the better. They want to know, what the routines are. Well, if mom does this, what's the best way that you have found that she can be redirected or something? What does she like to do? And focus on those positive things. But also, caregivers will always, always, always continue to be advocates for the people that they care for. They are their best line of defense when it comes to anything: assisted living, doctor's appointments, hospital stays, and everything.
Still part of the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The captain of the team.
Yeah. Oh, well, so that helps define that, doesn't
Yes.
it? Okay. Someone told me that as the captain of the team,
Yes.
they visited daily because they felt that was the best way to forge relationships with that professional caregiving team
Right.
now. I think that's part of what you're saying, isn't it? That the more you see that person, the more involved and more of a resource they can be.
Well, yes, but in that same vein, we kind of leave that up to the family. Like, if you need to take a break and step away, then you are completely fine in doing that. If you want to be here every day, that's also fine, and everything in between. It's giving them back the ball and saying, you do with it what you need, because we're always going to call if we need something, but they can be there as much. Or we have people who have, for instance, a family who live in 3 different states, and none of them are here.
So that, of course, is a scenario that makes sense.
Yes, but they might have stayed here because they have a network of friends here that keeps that individual engaged. But you still have these family members who are very involved, and it's just getting creative and making sure that lines of communication are always open.
Well, that's a terrific point, that scenarios are such that maybe visiting every single day is not possible.
Right.
In which case, other modes of communication, I presume, come into play.
Absolutely.
With those captains. I'm going to refer to them as captains.
Yeah.
One way to look at it, a caregiver is burned out. There's been a situation. Assisted living is now what's happening. But you said something that was interesting that might help a caregiver with the guilt of that, which is now you have a network of people. Your support network is wider.
Yep. And it can be, I'm hoping that it's a relief to people.
Yes.
Because they certainly look like they feel lighter once they have these other people who are constantly watching. It's a peace of mind thing. It comes down to having peace of mind. They don't have to be there all night because you have the care staff at the community who are, and you have these individuals who are meeting every day and talking about any changes in condition and can make recommendations. So you're not having to start from zero and go to 3 different doctors to be like, what's going on? I've noticed this. Well, and I'm not saying that the team at any given facility is right all the time, but at least it's not that feeling, that lost feeling, and that this is all on me. It's like, well, we noticed A, B, and C. I would make this recommendation. What do you think? Let's talk about this. Let's have a meeting about this, or go from there.
Yeah, think about that. So that's a great place to leave it, to just ponder those points, caregivers, as it relates to these big decisions and the point at which you need to make them. Christy Lisinski with Lakeview Assisted Living at the beginning of this said there's a whole list of questions that you should ask when you're evaluating the idea of assisted living, and we only got to a few of them. So you're welcome to reach out to her at Lakeview Assisted Living and ask those questions and say, wait, what are those questions I need to ask? So I'm sure that they would welcome that. Thank you, Christy.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
safe return, help home. If you are concerned about the potential for your person to wander, these are marvelous technology pieces from Miles for Memories that really relieve a lot of the concerns about that and bring someone home faster. Check them out at MilesForMemories.org. I'm Richard Pyatt. Creating Dementia Solutions is the program. We look forward to having you with us again.